Yep.
Yes.
Hmm.
Good evening, everyone, and thank you for joining us for another episode of Advocacy. I am so excited. I want to say this personally because I have been striving to find a guest to come on to talk to us about executive functioning disorder because I do believe that my daughter has it and I want to learn more about it. So I want to definitely thank Madeline, my co-host, for joining, and I want to thank Dr. Dawn Matera and Stephanie Reyes for joining us. And with that being said, I'm going to turn it over to them. I guess we can start off with you, Dawn. Tell
Sure.
us a little bit about yourself, and then Stephanie will factor you in to tell us about yourself.
Thank you so much for having us. This is very exciting. We love talking about executive function. Our project is brand new, so this is a great opportunity for us to talk about it and help spread the word. So thank you for that, first and foremost. So, my name is Dr. Dawn Matera, and my background is in special education. I have a master's in special education and a doctorate in educational leadership. I founded a therapeutic day school in Southern Connecticut, in Wilton, Connecticut, called the Westport Day School. And at the Westport Day School, that therapeutic school focused on students with mental health disorders in grades 5 through 12, or 5 through 13, really, because we have a post high school year now, and students with mental health and co-occurring learning disabilities. So that's what we do. That's our daytime work. That's our day job. And a few years ago, we found that there really wasn't great executive function curriculum out there, and we were being asked to do sort of the heavy lifting in terms of the IEPs and meeting those executive function goals. Besides the fact that students were coming in post COVID, especially with deficit areas in the executive functions. So I started to write curriculum for the school, started to implement it over time, and that's when sort of the idea for the executive function project was born. So our mission basically is to provide teaching resources, parent resources. So we're really targeting students, parents, and teachers with executive function curriculum and resources, from everything from online courses to direct services to professional development to textbooks. So that's basically who we are and what our mission is. And we're really excited about, having this be sort of our starting point and growing in the future. And I'll introduce Stephanie Reyes. She's my executive director and keeps my executive functions in order. The best, probably tries to keep my executive functions in order. And everybody needs a Stephanie. And Stephanie, turns out, is a really gifted curriculum writer, and she's great with designing resources for us. So we've got a lot of fun things in the pipeline. So I'll introduce Stephanie.
Hi, thank you for having me. I'm really excited. Can we hear me okay?
Yeah, I can hear
Okay,
you. It's a little
Echo.
echo. Yeah.
Yeah.
is this better?
Yes.
Yes. Uh-huh.
Perfect. I hear the mic. Okay, so I'm Stephanie. Nice to meet you all, and I'm so glad to be on your podcast. So I started teaching in 2017. I started out teaching in New York City public schools in a traditional high school setting, and throughout my career, I ended up in really unique settings. I ended up at a suspension site. I ended up at night school. I ended up teaching in transfer schools, and all of these unique settings where the students had very particular needs. They weren't just your average student. And that's when I realized that I was not able to teach them literary elements and understanding author's purpose and all of these wonderful things that I love about teaching English if they were not balanced in their emotions, in their preparedness, in just the everyday functions that we need to sit down and say, okay, I'm ready to learn something new today. So whether that meant having a notebook, or whether that meant they ate breakfast that morning and they feel good, or whatever it is that helps us be prepared for our day. My students didn't have those things, and it was really important to me to make sure that they were in the right mindset to learn before I could teach them anything. So that's when I started embedding executive function skills in my lessons to make sure that my students were prepared to learn before I tried to teach them anything new.
Interesting. Before we start, Kim, you have a great definition of executive functioning disorder. I've looked up some things and I kind of have an understanding, but I wanted to make sure our audience has an understanding of executive function.
Go ahead, Stephanie. I think we're right definition and just like a working definition of executive function.
Yeah, so I think in simple terms, the definition would be a set of skills that prepare us for everyday life. So I could give a couple examples like organization, planning, prioritizing, time management, goal setting. These are things that carry us through our day to day and make sure that we have all of our boxes checked. Don, did you want to provide a bit more textbook?
Well, I think just sort of informally, since we don't have a whole ton of time, I think if we look at it as the way that we learn, absorb, process, hold information, what we do with that information, and how we monitor it, like how we monitor the cognitive part of our learning, but also how we monitor the emotional part of our learning. So if our nervous system is dysregulated, those executive functions that sort of live in the frontal lobe of the brain aren't able to be accessed the same way. We could have small changes to our life or to our environment set off a series of difficulties that make it harder to access those executive functions. So again, task initiation, self-monitoring, self-control, and then of course, what people think of when they think of executive function is they think about physical organization, keeping your material straight, being able to think through a process, make notes, refer back. All executive functions. So when you think about it, we're really asking our students and ourselves personally in this world that we are living in at the moment to access a lot of different skills all at one time to complete a task or an assignment, whether it be a small goal or a large goal.
Now, would you consider, because when people get a diagnosis, would it fall under a disability or under special education, 504?
We're seeing executive function deficits be targeted on neuropsych exams. There are assessments called the brief. There are ways that we are testing for executive function, but not every student has access to that testing, right? Like that's more on the formal side of things. Informally, I think teachers see disorganization, zoning out, the inability to either start a task or complete a task or stay on task, ability to manage emotions, tune out distractions to be able to focus. And COVID didn't help any of us, right? We've all been through it, and it's changed our brains, it's changed our nervous systems, and we continue to navigate a world that's kind of new right now, and fast paced and a little bit uncertain. So it's not a wonder that our executive function skills are a little bit difficult to access right now. And it is our belief that the one thing missing, and the research tells us this, the thing that's missing right now from education is direct instruction materials on executive function. There's some great parent resources out there. Peg Dawson does an amazing job with some of her parent resources, George McCloskey, Lynn Meltzer. What those recommendations, those amazing researchers come up with in terms of recommendations is that we need a direct instruction model, not just sort of a loosely embedded model and hope for the best. Like we learned that about reading instruction, right? Like we know that some kids get it and other kids need direct instruction, and direct instruction is the way to go. Same with writing. And I don't think it's different for executive function. It's just skills we don't directly teach. And we don't teach students why we need to improve those skills. We just tell them, here's a toolkit. you should try this strategy. But we never really teach them about their learning style. We never really teach them directly about what these executive functions mean and how they can improve them. So that's really the mission. That's really why we're here, is to provide those resources and support for families and for schools.
I guess, well, because I was reading up on it, there's so many different things that can make this occur: stress, fatigue. But how do you know if it's this? What signs would a person see? Because we all have it.
Sure.
We all have
Right.
it, you know.
Yeah, so we could
So
talk about
it's even as adults.
ADHD, right? We could talk, especially as adults, right?
Mhm.
Because we could talk about things like ADHD or anxiety or depression or things like that, definitely, most definitely impact our executive functions. Those are very obvious. But there's a lot of subtle ways that our executive functions are impacted. Have you recently moved? Do you have a migraine that day? Are you sick? Are you unwell? Has there been stress in your life? Anything, I always say anything that changes your internal or external world can cause difficulty with executive function. And across the lifespan, executive function changes. So those of us who are a little bit older in our 50s, like, we're seeing cognitive changes in our own brains, especially if you're somebody who studies learning and you're like, wait, what is going on here? Um, so we do see executive function being a really important topic from birth on. And I think that's why it's important to understand it, and maybe not as much only from a diagnostic point of view. It's not because you have ADHD or dyslexia or anxiety. I think we all struggle. Neurodiversity certainly compounds that, right? Or a brain injury, a TBI, any kind of illness or injury, certainly. But it doesn't take much to throw our executive functions off. I mean, we can go into hormones, we can go into medical, right? There's a lot we could talk about. And that's why I think it's so important to hone in on, like, what these executive functions are and how to help people in a way that we're giving them some direct curriculum, student-facing materials, parent materials, and Stephanie can talk a little bit about those materials. But yeah, I think I think post-COVID, the world is on fire. We are different. We're built differently these days, and we are adjusting to things and having things thrown at us that we never saw coming. So we're all in this together, but what we don't want to do is gloss over, right? We want to, like, return back, like, maybe put the screens down, maybe not have so much computer-based curriculum. Like, let's get back to textbooks, let's get back to skills, let's teach kids how to learn and how to access information, and then set them free to explore.
I love that. I do. I guess when we're talking, the first thing that came to mind was the teaching styles, the learning styles. And I like the way that you said that, because when I go back, even when I was in high school and when I was in junior high, my son said, stop saying junior high, it's middle school. But, when I was in school, we were taught one way. It was one way or the highway.
I
There
was
was
just gonna
not,
say, yeah.
yeah, it was
We're the
just
same.
not
We
a
must be the same age,
certain.
one way or the highway. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think when I even look back at some of my classmates and different people that struggled in our class and they were considered as had behavioral problems, a lot of times, as we know now, a lot of people learn differently. And I think, and I know it's hard for the teachers, because what teacher can be in there to accommodate each and every person's learning, the
No.
way that they learn? That's kind of
Right.
hard. But it's like, for me, I think I hear more about executive functioning because my daughter had a disability, so I think we associate that more with people with disabilities. And I like the way you say that, but it's actually something that even neurotypical individuals
Absolutely.
struggle with every day.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I think, I mean, just to touch on teachers very, very quickly, I taught for a little over a decade before I moved into administration, and then founding the school, and then working more behind the scenes administratively, but I've been in the classroom, I've been in special education classrooms, and teachers are faced with larger caseloads than ever before,
Mhm.
funding cuts that really affect. I mean, I think sometimes we forget how much those funding cuts impact teacher coverage, teacher quality of life, access to resources, help for their students, right? So the teachers are in it right now. They are in it. And they are carrying us from an educational standpoint in this country. Teachers are carrying us, and we need to provide better resources for them. So that was also like that teacher in me never leaves. So that was also part of this. It's like the teachers have the skills, they've got the expertise, they have the education. These are bright, capable, motivated, and compassionate people who want to help kids, and we need to give them resources to be able to do that.
So how do we, the funding, as we know, the resources, it's going down by the day. How do we as parents and teachers work together to make sure that we identify, those pitfalls when it comes to our individuals, and that we kind of address these issues when
Mm-hmm.
we're at the base level? And because if not, they're going to grow with us to adults. And like you say, when we become adults,
Right.
something else. So
Right.
how
This
do
is not.
what advice would you give parents when it comes to working in concert with the teachers to assure that these kids are kind of met where they are so that they can get the help that they need?
Yeah, I think before I let Stephanie take over, because she's really my parent expert at this point, but before
Okay.
I let her take over, I will say this. I think that we target some of that by going back to basics and providing a school-wide curriculum across subjects, from paraprofessionals to special ed teachers to speech paths to school building administrators, right? OTs, PTs, that everyone has this language, so that if we are introducing an executive function a month and we are doing some direct instruction somewhere in the building, and that could be resource, that could be English, that could be all classes, like there could be a target of executive function language across the board. And I think that's one of the first important ways, rather than just saying this is for students with IEPs, which is very, very important, and we target that, and we like to help teachers and buildings with their IEP goals, and taking data. That's very, very important. But I think it's also important that we all get this information, because even as teachers and building administrators, we've never been more stressed out. We've never been more fatigued. We've never been more uncertain about our futures and like how this is going to affect us in our communities with our kids. Um, and that varies, right? In what type of school you're in, what grade level you're teaching, and what's the socioeconomic status of your building. There's lots of factors. But the bottom line is we all need it. And it helps teachers and professionals and adults as much as it helps the kids. So we get to have those conversations together about our memory and the expectations that we're not all perfect and that the teachers don't have all the answers, and it's up to them to memorize those answers. It's really going to be about more group learning and learning about executive function. But I think the parent question is a really good one.
Yeah, so I think from a parent perspective, what's really important for them to know and to start off with is that executive function learning can be done at home, can be supported at home. And as much as it is important to communicate with the school about your concerns, as well as a parent to advocate for your child, taking the initiative to explicitly talk to your children about these things, like teaching them responsibilities, teaching them to be organized with their homework or with their bedrooms, with their routines at home, and giving them that ownership over their own life is a great start. In my own experience, my 10-year-old is on the spectrum, and he struggled a lot before we started embedding routines in his after-school care. And I don't know if you had a chance to see one of our resources at the conference. It was a middle school routine kit. And in that kit, there is a morning routine, an after school routine, a study routine, and a bedtime routine. And I actually modeled those off of my own 10-year-old because these were the things that I found were very helpful to have, like literally a laminated page on the wall that he's like, okay, I need to make sure I wake up at 7:45, and he grabs his little whiteboard marker and checks it off. And he has breakfast and he checks it off. Then he brushes his teeth and he checks it off. And going back to that, at the beginning, it was very tedious to have to walk him through every single step and say, did you check off this? Did you check off that? And then, we've been using it for so long now that he's like, oh, I gotta brush my teeth. Oh, he doesn't even have to refer to the list anymore because he's checked it off so many times that is now ingrained and it's part of his morning routine. And so now if I try to deviate from that and I'm like, oh, have your breakfast first. And he's like, no, I need to do this first. Like he's already set in his ways now because we've practiced it. And I've given him the power over his own routine that I don't need to step in anymore because he's got it down. So I think parents need to trust that their kids can do these things and will learn to do them on their own and will want to do them on their own when we set up the structures and the scaffolds for them to do it.
I like that because what I see in that is life skills. I think it starts with life skills. And one thing, even my special needs daughter, Morgan is nonverbal, but we had her in life skills. And one thing that they taught her is, well, they work with me as well, is having almost a vision board. The vision board kind of helps her to understand what comes next. And even with our special needs individuals, that is so important. I know that we know with the autism ring, we know that some kids are routine driven. How is that different from being routine driven than having them to have the life skills or a vision board to keep them, kind of on point? How is that a little different? Is that different?
I think, yeah, I love that question because I think one thing that comes to mind is our toolkit for middle schoolers is customizable to your student, your learner. So you can change, it's flexible enough, right? That if your Jacob needs to change up his morning routine because maybe he's going to middle school and it starts an hour earlier and things are different, that is customizable. But I also want to say this is for adults too, because have you ever been in a situation where you had a great morning routine? I'll give myself as an example. When I was a teacher and a school building administrator, I had an excellent morning routine because I had to be on that parkway by maybe 6:50 in the morning. So it was really like the coffee was made the night before, like everything was organized because I had to get out of there so early and I had a place to be. And as I grew into a different role and I had a little bit more flexibility, I was finding myself having either a terrible morning routine because I was like, well, I've done this for 30 years. I could have a little bit of a relaxed morning routine. Then I realized I wasn't helping myself at all. I started to slip away from like a good morning routine, how to build a new one. And it wasn't the same one. It didn't look anything like the other one. I think it's the same for kids.
Yes, I agree. What you were saying about the routine, and a lot of us, as far as teachers, because I taught in the school system, we don't think a lot of it. We adults, we do that. We have a checklist, sticky notes here, there, and kids also need that. It's okay for them to have that sticky notes here, and all of us, even children, we need structure. Just like with COVID, we were home all day.
Right.
And my sleep, my days were just mixed up. Well, I
That's
go to
right.
bed and I'm not going to do anything in the morning. We all need some kind of routine. Yes, it's like, okay, same thing every day, but it does help. It helps you. And also another thing where you were saying about the electronics and stuff, I think nowadays people are behind the screens talking instead of face to face, and they don't know how. Even older people like my age, they don't know
Sure.
how they're used to the screen. And we need to keep it
Yeah.
simple.
Everything from reading
You know,
comprehension
right.
to task completion to motivation to emotional regulation, um, really to finding answers. Like if you think back to how we would find the answer to something in the past, doesn't
Hmm.
look like that now, right? Everybody's
Yeah.
walking around with like a little computer
Hmm.
and the sort of joy of learning has disappeared, and I think our kids deserve to see a little bit of what goes on behind the scenes. They deserve a little bit
Right.
of under the hood. They deserve to understand their own brain. They deserve to understand the human experience and how difficult it is and how challenging it is. And that the behaviors they're struggling with, the tasks they're struggling with,
Mhm.
are because they're struggling with executive function, not because they're a bad person, or not because
Exactly.
they're in special education, or not because they have anxiety, because we are all struggling. And I don't
Right.
think we even touch on communicating that enough.
Right. Because what you see on the screen, that's what they give you. But when you're out in the world, it's
Mm-hmm.
what you have to seek.
Yeah. Are we
And
thinking for ourselves? Are we
right.
writing for ourselves? Are we
Exactly.
questioning ourselves? I don't know that we have developed brains in the way that we always have been. And this generation of students, I think, deserves like a hard stop and for us to kind
Mhm.
of reconvene and say, we know technology is moving fast. We know AI is not only coming, but it's here. And who the heck knows what it is going to look like? Someone
Right.
way smarter than me will have to have that conversation with you. Um, but I'm the person who wants to say, whoa, like, let's get a textbook. Let's get a textbook together. Let's get a middle school textbook, a high school textbook, a college textbook. Let's start teaching people how to access their executive functions. What's their learning style? What, how they can improve, and how that may fall apart 3 days from now. You may need a different strategy. We don't teach that.
Yeah, right. Oh, I love it. That's what we need to campaign and do this.
Yes.
Exactly.
Well, I
I
think we're seeing schools take cell phones out of the classroom.
I couldn't believe they let them put them in because when my son was in middle school, they had a box that they had to drop them off. And my son is just 25. He'll be 26 in June. But they had a box that they dropped it in when they came into the school and they would get it back once they left.
So
But I
we've been
do
sort of,
believe, yeah, I do believe that a lot of this is the technology, like you and Madeline were saying. Number one, I was surprised that my sister, she said something about her son being on the phone finding answers to questions when the teacher asked. And I was just like, are you kidding me? I thought
why
they
be
could have
there?
been, yeah, that is crazy. I just don't understand the logic with that because number one, we know that if you put a cell phone in a child's hand, what they're going to do with it.
Hmm.
In a classroom, I feel like for me, and again, this goes back to the basics. It's a time for everything. And I
Right.
feel like if you put the phone in their hands, it's basically causing them to be distracted. It's like distracted driving.
Sure is.
Um, yeah,
And
and
I
so
think
for
what we
me, a
did was
lot of
we
this is
started,
just going back to the basics. I like the
right.
textbooks. I
Yep.
like the
Writing, the
yeah,
handwriting,
the
the hand.
writing, even math skills. My son,
Mhm.
um, when he went to college, he was like, Mom, they don't have textbooks. Because I had set aside a certain amount of
Yeah.
money for textbooks. He said in college, they didn't have textbooks. I said, well, what do you have?
Yeah, everything's on a screen. And I mean, there are countries, I think it's Finland, but if I'm misquoting, I apologize, but I think it's Finland who recently said, okay, no more laptops either. So we are seeing schools in other countries, maybe here in the US too, saying, okay, we are seeing such success with removing cell phones that the next step seems to be removing the laptops. And I think that we had this sort of decade long social experiment with technology. And we thought we were on the cutting edge and going in the right direction. And we're going to be out producing, outscoring, out reading, out writing, out mathing everyone. And that is just not the case. And we aren't seeing evidence of that. In fact, we're seeing hard evidence to the contrary. So kids are doing um, worse in the areas of reading, writing, and math. They're doing worse in study skills, and we're just seeing how these generations are actually performing not better than their parents, but worse than their parents, and that is not something we
Social
want.
skills too,
And the
right?
only thing that's really changed is our access to technology, because the structure of our school systems and the way we introduce material hasn't changed, I don't think, enough to account for those kinds of changes. I think what we're looking at is a screen addiction, and we all have it. I'm not blaming our kids. I mean, we're the adults in the room.
And it also affects the social skills. Yeah, the social skills. I know, again, we go back to when we were younger, we were always outside. It's physical too. So when you think about that, it's
Yes.
like we were always outside. So we were socializing, we were outside, we were running around. So it also affected us from a physical standpoint.
Sure. We were problem solving. We were making up games. We were playing games with like rocks and sticks, and like we were playing neighborhood games. We were riding bikes. We were doing things, playing board games and interacting with each other. And kids don't have that opportunity. We're not seeing that. Everything is so overstructured and the tech is over the top and it's overstructured, and we're worried about every minute being programmed for them. And I don't think we're giving kids enough time to explore.
Well, Stephanie, how do you look at it from, are you in the school system now?
No, so I transitioned out of the school last June, so almost 1 year ago.
Mm. So the executive functioning in the school when you were there, how was it as a teacher? How was it with you trying to implement that? How did that affect your students? Was it something that they fought back on, or was it something that most of them embraced?
So it was actually something that I personally got a lot of pushback on.
Mm.
One of the things that I found most common was that students wanted to just finish an assignment or finish a task. They didn't care if it was done well, and they didn't care if they actually learned from the assignment. They're just like, well, it's done, so give me credit. And so I really tried to push back on them, like, first of all, you have to want to learn, and you have to understand how you learned it so that whenever you have to learn something else, you already know, like, oh, I know that I learned this way, so I'm going to set up my desk in a way that helps, right? I'm going to turn off my screen. I'm going to put my phone in another room, things like that. And I also got a lot of pushback when they wanted to use technology automatically to start any task, whether that be writing down their homework, whether that be, okay, I need you guys to copy from a board. They want to take their phone out and just take a picture of it. I'm like, that's not writing things down. And so I definitely did get a lot of pushback on that. And if we're not instilling in them the reason that it's important to understand how you learn and why it's important to know how to learn, they just don't care. They don't want to. They don't realize that these things are important.
There's no investment there because they've had that screen in front of them for so long.
My son says now, he always tells me, Mom, when I have kids, they're not getting a phone. I said, well, isn't that funny? Because when you were in middle school and I didn't get you a phone, oh, Mom, I'm the only one that don't have a phone. And then when I got him a flip phone, he was too embarrassed to have the flip phone, and everybody had iPhones because I didn't know. So it's funny how, as the kids get older, my son truly understands and appreciates like going back to basics. He's like,
How old is your son now?
he's 25. He's going on 26. He's an old soul. But he was like, my kids are not getting a phone. I said, but now you understood why I did not want you to have a phone. I think in their generation, more people were on the video games. Not saying they don't do it today, but I think now it's so many people that are
Right.
on the phones. You see distracted driving, you see, where the kids are not getting to sleep, the eyesight, everything. And he's like, Mom, I don't want my kids to have to deal with that. And I think too, getting them the phone kind of exposes them to real life earlier than when you want them to have. You kind of want them to stay kids as long as possible.
That's
But
right.
society makes it so hard because everything. You don't have the phones, you don't have the phone booths anymore. And even if you did, you'd be too scared to stop at them. But you don't have the phone booths anymore. And then for direction, everything relies
Everything.
on the phone.
Well, I think
How do we move from this? How do
it's so
we go
interesting because we
backwards?
hear like, the Mark Zuckerbergs of the world and the tech industry and these CEOs that are on the cutting edge of technology and social media and AI, and their kids don't have access. So what does that tell you? You know, so I think that the dangers, we're finally at the point where we're like, this is the danger zone. We are here. We have to learn from it and we need to reset. We can do this. But we need these conversations. We need buy-in from parents and grandparents and teachers and administrators. And it's we've done this as adults. We have to be the adults that take back ownership over learning, teaching and learning. And I think we will get there. But I think these conversations about hard skills and soft skills and executive function skills and learning and being the best you that you can be and having a zest for learning, like where did that go? Like we need that back. And our belief is it's through direct instruction of the executive functions so that we can understand how we learn, make it less personal, intellectualize these tasks. Our students can handle it. They deserve this information. And I think that they would do really well with that approach to learning going into this wild age of AI.
Now, I know we've been talking, I'm sorry, real quick. I know we've been talking about from the neurotypical side, but I definitely want to get to the special needs side. And I definitely want Stephanie to tell us, especially since you are a mom firsthand, how this affects, because for my daughter, I'm throwing executive functioning, but I don't know how this relates to her because she's not on the phone. She's not, on social media. She doesn't do all of that. But I want you to go to your thoughts, Stephanie, but I also want us to then factor in how do my nonverbal special needs daughter, how does this affect her to where if certain things are not in place, now she has ADHD and it goes hand in hand with executive functioning disorder.
Yeah, just to finish my thought with what Dawn was saying, even when technology wasn't in everyone's hands, and like you said, when you were growing up, there was just one way to learn, and it was one way or the highway. Even then, students deserve to know what these skills were and be taught them explicitly. So regardless of the technology piece, understanding these functions and understanding these skills and how they help us is the key to being successful in practicing and developing these skills. And so to answer your question about how this applies to special needs, I think like you had said earlier, it goes more back to life skills and how much they're able to do for themselves before they need a lifeline or before they need extra support. And I also think that that gives them a level of self-sufficiency and independence to know that like, okay, you know what, I'm really struggling right now, but I know that I have a set of tools that I can refer to if this is hard for me, but let me open up my toolkit and see what can I do before, I need extra assistance from somewhere else.
It's so hard because some of our special needs students and our students with IEPs, we could have a student who is nonverbal, but the cognitive piece is average or intact, right? We can have students with intellectual disabilities. And we know that students with intellectual disabilities aren't going to hold on to this information and be able to understand the concepts around executive function. Like we're not helping them by giving them information that they cannot access. So I think it's important to say, okay, what are my students' cognitive strengths and weaknesses? What are their social emotional strengths and weaknesses, vocational strengths and weaknesses, life skills, social skills, academic, all of it. Because we don't want to assume anything. Our students are all unique and we want to really find out what their strengths are so that we can build on those strengths. Because like Stephanie pointed out, if we start with what they can do, we don't want to take away what they can already do. And that is the challenge, right? We want to build upon it and always be changing our strategies to help them because they're growing and evolving and learning. And a 15-year-old student with an intellectual disability may not be able to access the information until they're 19, certain pieces of it until they're 19. So it's really about exposing them at the right time. And then whatever they are unable to access themselves, whether it be due to a diagnosis, a medical condition, a brain injury, a disability, it is our job to put the proper supports in place so that they can access it and have some level of independence with that skill.
Yeah, because my thing is every time I've heard executive function in the special needs community, it almost like it goes hand in hand with ADHD. And for me, it's like I'm like, okay, so I know they're like super active. Is it more like their brains are going 1,000 different directions? Because when I looked it up, it's like they said, it's like the airplane where the airplanes are flying around, and it's like so many
Yeah.
different things and they can't stay on task. And I'm like, wow,
I think that example is good not only for ADHD though, right? I think anxiety causes a similar kind of dysregulation internally. If you are anxious, if you are depressed, and like we all have episodes or instances or periods in our lives that are more challenging, and during those times, it's going to be more challenging to access our executive functions. So the more severe our ADHD is, like a lot of these things are on a spectrum, right? The more severe our ADHD, the more severe or debilitating our anxiety is, sort of the more difficult those concepts are going to be to access. So it's a slippery slope in terms of there's a huge spectrum but of abilities and they change all the time.
mm-hmm, mm-hmm. I get
So
that. So
it's a
now,
constant conversation. It's not something you don't just learn about this executive function curriculum and then you walk away from it. You are exploring it, learning more about it, growing those skills every day. You would say through college, but then when we all get through college, we realize we become parents and adults, and then we go back to college, or we get a different job, or we get a house, or we give birth, or we adopt a child, or we take care of a parent or a grandparent. Like all of these things challenge our executive function. So it's, I think, important to be sort of a foundational structure for learning and functioning as a human being.
and I will say that most of the time when I looked it up, I saw that a lot of people were diagnosed, they were called lazy. They were called, and I was just like, when I tell you it was so interesting because this executive functioning for me is almost like a catch-all. It was talking about people being called lazy. And I know for my daughter, I don't know if this is executive functioning disorder or if this is just her, but she lives in dysfunction. She does. Like, she will put all of her toys over the floor. She will come in the room, put all of her toys in the room. If her room is clean, it's like, I can't function. She loves disorder. So once she throws all of her toys over the floor, she pulls everything out of her drawers, then she's at peace. I'm like, what is that? So I
I
don't
mean,
know. I
yeah, I
don't
mean,
know.
and again, like diagnostically speaking, there's so many smarter people who could probably answer that question, but depending on the student's diagnosis, cognitive level, like is it a self-soothing thing? I don't know. But does she or can she learn, have the skills to sort her toys, to put them away? Like, do certain toys go here? Do we sort them by color? Do we sort them by type of toy? Do we need to minimize the number of toys in one space? And certain toys are in this room and certain toys are in that room so that there's not 150 toys in one room. Like those are the executive building kinds of things that we might need to do for her until she could do those for herself.
Also, it's almost like the messy cook, the messy artist. When they cook a meal, stuff is all over the place. When they're painting, stuff is all over the
Yep,
place. But they make a beautiful picture, a
that's
beautiful
right.
meal.
Could just be
But
her learning style.
it's
Yeah,
almost
could be
like
her
that.
style. Yep.
Yeah, and I'm
Not
like that.
every
I mean, I have stuff. I like things scattered when I'm doing work, but then I put it together at the end of the day. So
Yep.
yeah.
I
Some people
guess
just
you're
work
right.
for it.
I never even thought about it like
Yeah.
that. But me and my husband always say, well, my son said this too when we were younger. We had a little fortune cookie, and when we pulled out the thing, it says, who would you like to talk to find out more about them? And he said, Ma, I would love to talk to Morgan
Oh,
because there's so much to her that we don't know. And I
yeah.
mean, when I say we're just like trying to look for answers. She comes in the house,
Right.
she opens a drawer. As soon as she comes in the house, she opens a drawer and she pulls every spoon out of the drawer. And I'm like, what in the world does that mean? I've Googled it. I've tried to find like what is that? But it's almost like that's her norm. I mean, and it
Mm-hmm.
drives me
Yeah. It
crazy.
might be that she holds herself together all day at school and she
And she
cannot,
just needs to let it out.
right, she can't just empty everyone's desk and she can't
Yeah.
empty the teacher's desk. So she keeps it all in. And when she comes home, she's like, oh, here we go. I can make a little bit of mess and feel better. So it could be self soothing.
Well, it could
We
be.
might have to give her some replacement activities to self soothe when she gets home.
I think she has too. I think what you said was right. I think she has too many toys because she has a toy box here, toy box, and she got bags of toys. She got baskets of toys. And a lot of the times we just try to make it accessible for her. But I think sometimes when you have so many choices, it's like maybe it's
Yeah. She
overwhelming.
might need one of those ball pits, like
Oh
the
my
just to be
God.
like, I'm gonna just like go at it, girl, get it out of your system.
Yeah, she has the balls too. We kind of hide those because she makes such a mess with them. I mean, when I say I ordered these balls one time, it was like 100 balls. We gave half of them away because when I tell you it was like a carpet on our floor. She would throw the balls everywhere and then cry when it's time to pick them up. I'm like, are you
Right.
kidding me? So, Stephanie, I need to have a plan. We had a visual in place of her picking up her toys. When I say whenever it was time to pick up her toys, she would run for the border. She would run for the border. If you ever want to see her cry, it's because you told her to clean up.
Me too.
Yeah, well, I don't know. So I'm like, yeah, I'm trying to search. I'm always trying to explore different things about Morgan, but this is very interesting because it makes me to understand and know that there's more to, Morgan than what meets the eye. And for me,
Mhm.
it's when I read on executive functioning and it had the airplane monitor and it had the plan, I said, that is my daughter. I believe it. I do. I believe it. Now, one thing that I do want to ask is the executive project. I know we've talked about executive functioning. You all have the executive project. Can you tell us about that and how you've put this in place to help out individuals?
Go ahead, Stephanie. You take that one.
Okay, so our flagship, right, our first product, our baby, is the Discover You textbook, which is a little bit different than what you have, than what you purchased at the fair, at the conference. This one is actually
Oh,
our
yeah.
high school curriculum. And this is a full year, 10 module or 10 chapter textbook that has the lesson content and the activities that students do in the book that teach them skill by skill, starting with learning styles, all the way from time management to cognitive flexibility. And it gives them the conceptual knowledge, right? What the skill is, why it's important, how it's going to help us, and then the activities to practice those skills, right? How do they apply to our daily lives? How do they apply to our school life? How do they apply to our social lives, our relationships, our work lives, right? And so this one is from grades 9 through 12. And we designed it in a way that is student friendly and teacher friendly. So there's no separate like teacher curriculum or anything of the sort. Like everything that you need is in this one book. And it's meant to be for the student to learn and to practice with. John, if you wanted to add to that.
Yeah, and I'll just add our middle school curriculum called Build Your Skills is grades 6 through 8. And this one, we're playing around with the bindings. This is a proof, not finished yet, not out on the market yet, but this is coming this summer. If not, yes, this summer. It's happening this summer. I'm going to speak it into existence. And that is grades 6 through 8. And the third book in the series is called Next Steps. It's not actually an elementary book. We actually went up a grade level to post high school. So Next Steps is a transition curriculum for transition programs, high schools, teen centers, people who are vocational programs who are working with young adults ages 18 to 22 on executive functions. And that book is set up a little bit differently. It's set up in domains of academics and learning, vocations, life skills, and social skills. So those 4 domains are highlighted in the Next Skills curriculum, getting students ready to be a young adult, whether they're going into a classroom, whether they're going to college, whether they're going to work, or life, right? Like, we need this for life. It's not always about our job. It's not always about our school. Sometimes it's about wellness in our life.
Right.
So that's the 3-book series. So that's the curriculum, how we started out with writing curriculum. And then the other products that we have, Stephanie, are the Parent Playbook.
Yeah, so we have a lot of digital resources on our website. The Parent Playbook is one you have in your hand. And then we have some lesson planners for teachers. We have a behavioral intervention plan. We have the middle school routine kit, the one I had mentioned earlier. We have a journal, like a reflective journal for teachers to think about how their executive functions support their own teaching and lesson planning. And we also have a parent discussion calendar. And so that one gives parents monthly prompts to kind of go deeper into how to approach certain topics with their children, to ask them like how they feel about their own executive functions. So it kind of gets you away from, oh, how was school today? It was fine, end of discussion, right? It kind of forces you to have an in-depth conversation about, why is it that you struggle so much with math? What is it about the math it's not clicking? Is it the numbers? Is it the formulas? Is it the holding the numbers in your head while you're multiplying? I will forget when I'm doing long division. If it's a super long problem, by the time I'm in the 3rd step, I forgot what the numbers were and I have to recheck. So I get it. And, kids sometimes don't know how to express those things if you're not digging deep into their brains and asking them the hows and the whys of their day.
I'm sorry. I have a question. Well, you were just saying about, you were asking your child about the math situation. Now, again, coming from a teacher side or on the other side, can't that be automatically mislabeled? Oh, they have problems with that. Let's refer them.
Yeah,
That's one of the
absolutely.
scary. Well,
What if
like I said, I did special ed, taught it, and if you need to help, you need to help. But it should not always be like, okay, this is it. This is the box.
right? And
And
listen,
that's yeah.
the most experienced of us cannot tell, looking at a student who is sitting at a desk, if
Right.
that process is ADHD, if that process is auditory processing, if that
Exactly.
process is executive function, if it's memory, if it's anxiety, if it's depression, if it's sleepiness. Like, we can't, let's stop assuming we know all the things. And I think what we need to do instead is teach the skills and teach the student about executive function so they can use tools and strategies that match their learning style and their current level of functioning, whatever that is. Because I have to change mine all the time for my current level of functioning and what is
Right.
going on in my life.
Right. Yep. That is so true.
Well, I like this. And I know for me, when you all were talking about the math, we used to get so mad when our math teacher would tell us he didn't just want to see the answer, but he wanted to see how we arrived at the answer.
Nothing makes kids madder than showing your work.
Oh my gosh. Yes. And they were like, we want to make sure that you understand the process. And I used to love math. That was algebra and everything was one of my favorite subjects. And one time he used to make us come to the board and he knew I had the answer. So the way that he worked it out, I did it totally different, but I got the right answer. And he was amazed at, how did you get this answer? Because you didn't, and I was just like, no, but this was the way that I did it. The approach was totally different, but the answer was right. And to this day, I mean, it was amazing to me that, again, when you're talking about executive functioning, it made it look at it like, okay, I arrived at the answer the same way. I just handled it differently. So I learned differently than the way that he taught us. But whenever we would get an answer right, they were like, no, you're not going to get the whole You don't get the whole point because you need to show your answer. Again, understanding this, I understand now why they did that. And then it made us better at from an educational standpoint.
Mhm.
No, for sure. And for someone like me, I had to show my work because it was the only way I could even have a shot at getting the right answer in math. So, for someone like how my brain worked, of course I had to show my work. Like there was no way I was arriving at that answer in my head. Wasn't going to
No.
happen. So I didn't fight it. But like I understand if your mind works faster than that, or you're you know how to do this problem, why should I have to do 16 of the problems if I can do 4 of the problems and demonstrate that I know how to do it by showing my work? It's not just about the labor involved, which kids often feel offended by. Like, why do I have to do that?
Hmm. This has been really awesome. I really appreciate that because this book, I did buy this book. I bought it for someone else. I haven't given it to them yet, but I even for myself, when it comes to, that airplane, what is it, the airplane thing? I'm always going in a thousand different directions,
Mm-hmm.
but I just accredited that towards me being a mother, a wife, doing everything, working, and I see how
Our
even when
kids
I'm
are
not,
our
yeah,
kids are doing that too, right? Sports and
exactly. It's so much more
speech.
demanding.
If they're not doing sports and activities, they might be doing speech and therapy, and they might be
Yeah.
doing other things. They might be doing social group outside of school. Their days are long,
Hmm.
and they're packed full. So of course there's fatigue, and then there's nutrition, and then there's sleep, and
Mm,
you know access to healthcare, and like there's so much. There's
it
so
is.
much.
It is.
But yeah, so all of our resources are at our website, the Executive Function Project.
Can you put that into the group chat, please? Can you put that there so that everyone
Absolutely.
knows, yeah, how to
Where to
find this?
find us. We have a
Because I will
brand
say
new.
that when I read the book, it was very, very helpful when I looked at it. And I like the way that you all are asking. I think when I talked to Stephanie, she told me, she said, write down, answer some of the questions, and then go back like sometime and do it again and see how your thinking has, been redirected or it's changed in some ways.
And that's metacognition. And we didn't talk about metacognition today, but that is sort of one of the overarching, in my mind, the big one, metacognition. Thinking about your thinking, revisiting your thinking, changing your plan, being able to say, maybe I was wrong, maybe I could have done that better. How did that go? That went really well. Being able to analyze your own thinking and your own process is a higher level skill that we're shooting for our kids.
Wow. This has been great. I really appreciate you guys coming on
Thank you
because
so much
now
for having us.
yeah, it drives me again to wanting to know more. I mean, and again, for me, it's like just not even just about my daughter, but wanting me to know more about myself because again, it's like this, you don't even think about. I was coming on trying to more so factor in how it related to my daughter and her disability, but I see it's even for me.
As teachers and parents, I really think that as teachers and parents, it's also our responsibility to learn about our own executive functions so that we can stand in front of them as good models,
Yeah.
and also stand in front of them and say, wow, that was a disaster. I could have done that differently. And
Yeah.
that was this executive function, but I might be 40 something, I might be 50 something, I might be 70 something years old, but I'm still learning and I'm still practicing. And kids
Yeah,
need to hear that.
the vision boards should have come out some time ago. And one thing I'm happy about is that when my son went to college, he was able to put up a board and he said, Mom, this worked for me. He loved writing things. And to this day, if he's looking at his goals, I look in
It's
his
got to be
room
visual. How
and he
cool.
has a
Yeah.
visual and for me I'm visual, so I will say learning over time what worked for me. It's like somebody can talk, they can have a lecture for 2 hours, it doesn't work for me. Just give me the book and let me go at my own pace, let me do it. So
Yes.
I've had to discover that for myself. So I that's my closing remarks, ladies, because I'm serious. I think I can keep going on. I'll have you guys over analyzing me. So
I know we should have the session.
I know we're battling. We're having such. I'll be like, now, what
Right,
do you think about this and me?
right. This
Yeah, I
is
appreciate you ladies coming on. So those are my closing remarks. Thank you because it's really helping me to see me, and that
Mhm.
way I can better assist my daughter. Thank you, ladies.
Yeah, we're all in this together for sure.
Yes, thank you. This has been great. I mean, I've learned so much, and I'm going to go on the website and look at those books. And like Paula said, even me for an adult, because earlier today I was all over the place trying to get things, because I've, like I said, been having trouble sleeping and all this, and just getting frustrated. But I see, but I love what you two are doing, and I'm all board, with it. Let's do this.
Thank you. Yeah, let's save ourselves, right? We have to do this
Yes,
for ourselves. We have to do this for our students. And I
right.
think it's the right way to go when we tackle sort of like being a human being and living and learning through all the things that
Mhm.
we have to deal with right now.
Yes, thank you so much.
Thank
Now,
you for
one
having
question:
us.
Do you
Yes.
all have an adult version? I know we got the parent playbook.
So
Now,
we
I
get
really
that
think
so we get that question all the time. Every time we have a conference, every time
I
we go
was
somewhere,
going
we
to
have at least one parent or professional say, "Where's the adult workbook?"
right.
So I promise you there is a list of resources that are in the works, and that's one of them.
Okay.
okay, good because
We
I
will look,
need that. I want to
we will
find
look
out a
out
little
for
more.
it.
Have us back when the adult version comes out.
There you go.
Exactly. So we can have you on here analyzing us.
Yeah.
Well, thank you, ladies, for joining us. We
Yes.
Thank you so
appreciate it.
much.
And again, please put your website into the chat because I want the parents to be able to go on because
Mhm.
I think going back to the basics, being able to help their students
Right.
is going to be so good. I really do think so. And I think most parents, I think we don't realize that we think that that's a lot of work, but if you give them the tools, then it'll
Hmm.
help them as they
That's
go
right.
along.
Right.
Yeah, work in
Yeah,
progress.
yeah. So that would be great. Thank you, ladies.
Thank
Thank you, and
you.
thank you for the work that you do and for spreading the word. We're just
Yes.
grateful to be part of it. Thank you.
I
Thank you.
appreciate it. Thank you.
All
Y'all
right.
have a
Take
good
care.
one.
Good night.
Bye
Good
bye.
night.